The proposed copper-nickel mine in northeast Minnesota hit another snag this week. You probably heard the story. The environmental study that was on and then was off is now on again, and so that is stopped. It's one more issue that's politically loaded, and when the announcement was made, Representative Stauber and folks were outraged. And Representative McCullum and folks were celebrating, as you might expect. There was one comment, though, that I heard that really caught my ear. And it was someone who said, we're missing out on a golden opportunity to cash in on the rich mineral deposits in the Boundary Waters canoe area. To cash in. That's in the Genesis story, right? God puts us here to cash in on the riches of the earth. Yes? Maybe not. Maybe there's some deeper, richer purpose that we are called to in this case. Another story this week, the Enbridge Line 3 pipeline that brings the tar sands oil from Canada through northwest Minnesota. It was announced that the construction had, in one place, dug too deep and ruptured an artesian aquifer that feeds this rare, delicate wetland in northwest Minnesota. Enbridge was supposed to have this all fixed, the leak taken care of by the 15th of October. They didn't have it done, so they're on the hook for $3.3 million. While this has been leaking for months, the water seeping out, the estimate is that at least 24 million gallons of groundwater is gone. And that wetland may die as a result. So, does $3 million fix it? Put it right. Would $30 million replace that? Or is it just the cost of doing business? And when is business too costly? The oil spill off of the coast of Southern California. For over 50 years, there's been drilling out off the coast there in the ocean. And people have been cashing in for half a century. Now the cost comes, the bill comes due, and it comes to who? The people who live in the area, the wildlife, the sea creatures, the ocean itself, and generations to come. We don't know. How long can we afford to cash in like that and do business like that? How long can the earth afford that? A couple decades ago, I was at a Nobel conference at Gustavus, and it was on economics and environment, I think, or something like that. I don't remember exactly. But John Cobb, who's a United Methodist theologian, spoke as part of this array of speakers, Nobel laureates, and he challenged the idea then, the concept then of GDP as an accurate accounting of productivity for a nation. He said because it doesn't take into account the cost of the products that we make. So he said, what about the resources that we dig up that are irreplaceable and are gone forever, used? What about the pollution that results? What about the unexpected consequences of, say, an oil spill in the ocean, or an artesian aquifer ruptured and groundwater disappearing? Shouldn't we somehow value those things accurately as we can and put them on the other side of the ledger so we balance out, so we know what we're producing and what we're costing? Isn't that only fair? And I have thought, and I've heard others talk about, all of the human capital that we have failed to cash in on, in that sort of crass language, all of the creativity and ingenuity and courage of people who, because we allow so many to live in poverty, they're never set free to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as we say we want all people to enjoy. What do we miss? What do we lose? What do we squander? See, there's a lot of things that we turn a blind eye to that go on in our system, in our world. Today's story is a healing story about blindness. A blind man is healed by Jesus. Though Jesus says it's actually your faith that heals you. It's your trust in the God that I come to bring into focus for you and call you to. That's what makes you well and whole. It's not me necessarily. And he also says the healing doesn't happen until he announces it, until he declares it done, if you read the way the story unfolds. Which is interesting, because in some healing stories, particularly where the leper is concerned, Jesus says, now go show yourself to the priest or the rabbi, the local religious authority, so that the healing can be verified and you can be restored to the community and there can be a celebration of this. In this case, Jesus facilitates the healing, verifies that it's happened, announces it, and tells everybody why it happened. It's a wonderful encapsulation right there, and very interesting, I think. The dynamics of the story are also fascinating. You have a blind beggar who has a name. He's not just some anonymous nobody. He's somebody who's named. And he's sitting beside the road outside of what town? Jericho. Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, right? Jericho was an early breakthrough place for the early Hebrew people. And remember the story, it was the noise that they made that brought the walls down, part of it shouting. What does the blind man do in the story today? Son of David, have mercy on me, he cries out. Is that intended to bring the wall down? Is that why it's in Jericho? The blind man has a name. His name is Bartimaeus. Bar means son of, and Timaeus is a word that can be translated as the disgraced one or the exalted one. Isn't that interesting? So he's the son of Timaeus, son of disgrace. Is that why he's blind? The sins of the fathers. It's because of sin that this happens, and that's part of the belief system. And so when he cries out, they tell him, shut up. You don't have any right to talk. You don't have any right to anything. You are a disgrace. Stay where you are and keep quiet. What does Jesus do? He calls him through the crowd. Tell him, come. Tell him to come. He turns the crowd around to serve a different purpose, and he calls the blind man to come to him. What does Bartimaeus do? He springs up. You can see it. From his place of disgrace, he is exalted. He is lifted up by the invitation of Jesus. This is a theological encounter here. And he throws off his cloak, his coat, his blanket, his sleeping bag, his security, his covering, his hiding place, his place where he could keep any coins that are dropped for him close by so that somebody can't come and snatch them. He throws that away. It's part of his identity. He's letting it all go, and he comes to Jesus. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Jesus then says, what do you want me to do for you? And Bartimaeus says, I want to see again. So apparently he's been able to see before, and this is a restoration of his sight. That's when Jesus announces it. Well, it's your confidence, it's your trust that God is present and hearing you that is what heals you. Go. Your faith makes you well. Your deep trust in God makes you well. And what does Bartimaeus do? Does he go? No. He comes with Jesus. One of the commentators calls this faithful disobedience, which I love. How interesting. Because he's beside the road and he can't see anything and he can't get anywhere. Now, restored, he sees the way. And he cannot help himself but go on the way with Jesus. Fascinating. It's a rich, healing story. It's fun and it's full of symbolism and levels of meaning, just all kinds of stuff. Way more than I tried to ferret out here. But could it be even more than that? Could it be a parable or an allegory? What if Bartimaeus really represents the nation of Israel? What is the state of Israel in Jesus' time? In some ways disgraced because some of them are collaborating with the Romans. They're dominated. They're going nowhere. They're beside the road. They're in a low place. Jericho is a low place near the Dead Sea. They're begging, some of them, to survive, and some of them don't survive. Jesus comes to the people of Israel, and what does he do? He invites them to come along, to come out of their place, to throw off this beggar's cloak, this collaborator's cloak, whatever you've covered yourself with. Come with me. Come and see again. See yourselves again. See who you are again. See your world again. See your promise again. See what can happen again. Stand up. Be exalted. See and live anew. What value would such a parable have for a nation like ours today? A nation where there is legislation being passed right now to silence people so they can't vote. A nation that is being sought out by people from troubled places in the world as a place of security. People crying out for safety, for a place where they can be, refugees. And some are coming, but many are being turned away, not even being heard, just sent away. And what about the earth? What is going on? What is climate change? What is happening to the environment? Is the earth crying out, have mercy on me? For God's sake, have mercy on me. I am your home. The theme of the radio program was places to get away from it all, places in the world where you could go and leave everything behind and get away, especially from people and the influence and evidence of people. And the two people on the program, one was a photographer, I think, for National Geographic, so lots of landscape photography, wildlife, that sort of thing. And the other was an audio engineer who was interested in soundscapes, who would go out to these places, these remote places, and record the sounds without any human sounds, without any traffic noise, without any machinery clanking, without any jackhammers, or whatever else, all the stuff that we hear all the time. And out where there's no light pollution, where you can see the night sky. And nature responds to nature. Well, they said there is a shrinking number of such places in the world, as you might imagine, as human encroachment continues. And one of the places is the Boundary Waters canoe area, where you can get away from other people and the influence of people, where it's dark and quiet, where there's just nature. They said, do you know how priceless that is? That you have this right here? Truly priceless. Irreplaceable. Once gone, gone. Well, people were calling in about places that they had been and about being in the Boundary Waters. One guy called in. He had been in the Boundary Waters at one point for 6 weeks by himself, if you can imagine. I can't. 6 weeks. And he said, as you might imagine, it was beautiful, and it was remote, and it was quiet, and the sounds of nature, it was all it was. It was so serene, it was so renewing. He said, but about the end of the third week into the fourth week, I started to hear something. And it was this deep, low, long sound that would begin softly and build and crescendo and then fade and disappear. And then it would be silent. And then it would start again. And it was this long, low sound. Just kept doing that. And he wondered if somebody was doing some sort of seismic testing or something in the area for mining or whatever. He couldn't figure out what it was, but it just continued. And once hearing it, he couldn't not hear it. He said it became strangely comforting. Just sort of holding him, this rhythm. When he came out, then he'd ask people if there was something going on, that this sound was, he was hearing the sound, and they looked at him like he was crazy. You've been out in the woods too long by yourself, dude. Well, he didn't ask too many people after that, but he happened to encounter in an outfitter's store or something, an Ojibwe man. And they got into conversation about nature and being out in the Boundary Waters. And he said, I heard this sound, this deep, deep sound. And the man said, oh yeah, that's the heartbeat of the earth. You're lucky. Most white people can never get quiet enough for long enough to hear it. You should consider yourself blessed. The heartbeat of the earth. Never heard it. You? I've never tried to hear it. Maybe I should. Maybe we should. Or maybe we should just treat the earth as if it's alive. What a concept. What would that take? And what would it do? When Bartimaeus is asked by Jesus, what do you want me to do for you? He says, I want to see again, Lord. Not just see, but see again. See the world again. See the people around me again. See them with new eyes as if for the first time. See everything again as if for the first time. And then see it again and again and again and again. Wouldn't that be miraculous? To see one another as we really are, to see the world as it really is, to release each other from the ways we lock each other in, the way we see each other, to see again, to free up and see again. That would be a miracle. Do we want to see again? Do we? Wouldn't that disrupt our way of being and doing business in the most wonderful way we can't even imagine?